Most witches want to work with light, but here's the thing. The gods who changed the world were the ones who weren't afraid to descend. Modern spirituality has this love affair with the aesthetic of transformation. Everyone wants the glow-up, the manifestation journal, the moon-charged water in the pretty bottle. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. But we've stripped out the part that actually changes you. The blood. The bone. The part where you have to go down into the dark and sit with what you find there. We've turned shadow work into therapy language, something clinical you do in an office with soft lighting and a tissue box. When really, it's the oldest magical technology we have. Every mystery tradition that actually mattered required one thing from its initiates. You had to face what you've been spending your whole life running from. The Eleusinian mysteries didn't hand you wheat and call it a day. Shamanic initiation involved literal dismemberment. The Morrigan didn't meet you in a field of wildflowers. She met you on a battlefield, and she asked you what you were willing to become. Because here's what nobody tells you. Your shadow isn't your damage. It's the raw power you've been trained to call damage, so you'd never touch it. So you'd keep it locked away where it's safe. Where it can't be used. And the culture likes it that way, honestly. A witch who's integrated her shadow? That's a witch who can't be controlled. Here's the thing about Jung. He didn't invent shadow work. He gave it a name that made sense to a culture that had completely forgotten how to ritualize darkness. Before him, we had initiations. Mystery cults. Descent myths where you went down into the underworld and came back changed. Jung just translated that language for a world that had pathologized everything our ancestors knew how to hold. The shadow, in his framework, is everything you've disowned. Your rage. Your hunger. Your grief. The parts of you that don't fit the story you're supposed to tell about being good, being likable, being small enough to be safe. It's not evil. It's exiled. And there's a massive difference. In Jungian terms, the goal is integration. In witchcraft terms, it's sovereignty. Same destination, different maps. One uses archetypes and the collective unconscious. The other uses ritual, deity work, and the kind of magic that doesn't ask permission. But both are pointing at the same truth. You can't be whole while you're at war with yourself. And here's what happens when you ignore your shadow. It doesn't disappear. It leaks out sideways. In projection, where you hate in others what you've buried in yourself. In self-sabotage, where you destroy the thing you say you want. In spells that backfire because half of you doesn't actually want what you're asking for. Your magic fractures along the same fault lines as your psyche. You're not alone down here. That's the part people forget. Every mythology has gods who live in the liminal spaces, who stand at the edge of what we're allowed to say out loud. And they're not there to rescue you from the dark. They're there to walk through it with you. Hecate at the crossroads with her torches. She doesn't pull you from the underworld, she lights the way through it. There's a difference. One keeps you dependent. The other makes you dangerous. Persephone didn't just survive her time below. She became its queen. That's not a trauma story, that's an initiation. She ate the pomegranate seeds on purpose. She claimed what happened to her and turned it into power. The Morrigan. Lilith. Kali. Every culture has deities who refuse to be sanitized, who look you in the eye and say the uncomfortable thing is also the sacred thing. They don't traffic in positive vibes. They traffic in truth. And here's what these gods promise. You won't come back the same. But you will come back whole. Not healed in the way that means nothing ever happened. Whole in the way that means every broken piece is now integrated, alchemized, made holy. That's the work they guard. Shadow work isn't positive affirmations in reverse. It's not about looking in the mirror and saying I accept my darkness 3 times while secretly hoping it goes away. It's sitting with the parts of yourself you've exiled and asking what they actually need. Like you'd ask any other part of yourself that's been locked in a room for years. Here's what that looks like in practice. Light a black candle. Sit with it. And speak directly to your anger, your shame, your fear. Out loud. Not to banish it, not to transmute it into something more palatable, to meet it like you'd meet any other ally who's been trying to get your attention. Ask it what it's protecting. Because it's always protecting something. Your anger might be guarding your boundaries. Your shame might be holding the parts of you that got punished for being too much. And here's the thing that'll make you uncomfortable. Notice what you judge hardest in other people. The traits that make your skin crawl, the behaviors that trigger you into next week. That's your shadow wearing someone else's face, showing you exactly what you won't let yourself be. The magic happens when you stop trying to fix what's wrong with you and start integrating what's been split off. When you bring the exiled parts back into the circle. That's when your spell work stops feeling like you're fighting yourself. Because you're not casting from a place of lack anymore. You're casting from wholeness. Even the uncomfortable kind. Here's what nobody warns you about. When you start doing real shadow work, your magic changes. And I mean visibly changes. You might find yourself drawn to spirits you used to avoid, ancestral guides with complicated histories, deities known for their rage instead of their mercy. Your altar might start looking different. Bones where there used to be flowers. Storm water instead of morning dew. Obsidian instead of rose quartz. That's not corruption. That's expansion. Your spell work gets more honest, more specific, less concerned with whether it makes anyone comfortable. You stop crafting intentions that sound like affirmations you'd see on Instagram. You start naming exactly what you want, exactly what you're banishing, in language that would make your former self flinch. And honestly, good. Magic was never supposed to be polite. It was never supposed to fit neatly into anyone's idea of what spiritual practice should look like. But here's where it gets interesting. People around you might start acting weird. They'll say you've changed, and they won't mean it as a compliment. Because shadows make people profoundly nervous when they haven't dealt with their own. Your willingness to sit in the dark reminds them of everything they're avoiding. This is where you find out if your practice was ever about genuine power, or if it was just about looking the part. And that distinction, that's everything. Here's what integration actually looks like. And it's not some perfectly balanced light and dark aesthetic where you wear a lot of grey and talk about duality at dinner parties. Integration means you stop hemorrhaging energy trying to pretend half of you doesn't exist. You stop white-knuckling your way through life, holding your breath, hoping no one notices the parts you've been hiding. The magic you can do after shadow work? It's different. It's not louder, it's deeper. Roots instead of sparks. The kind of spell work that doesn't just manifest outcomes, it shifts foundations. You stop casting from a place of lack, that desperate, grasping energy, and start casting from wholeness. Even if that wholeness includes grief and fury and all the things you used to hide in the basement. especially those things. Every god who descended came back with a gift. Inanna walked out of the underworld with wisdom that couldn't be taught any other way. Persephone became queen of 2 worlds. Your gift is waiting too. But you have to go down to get it. You have to meet the parts of yourself you've been running from and sit with them long enough to hear what they've been trying to tell you. Your shadow isn't the enemy at the gate. It's the guardian who's been waiting for you to finally come home. Follow Blackfire Atelier. I'll see you in the shadows.